Well, there's a 900 million Ghana cedi intervention to try to resolve an issue which affects 347 microfinance institutions. They've all had their licenses revoked for a variety of reasons. The truth is, they've become insolvent. This is the second round. In the first round, many banks had their licenses revoked, some were consolidated, and others simply ceased to exist. Now we have almost 350 microfinance institutions gone under. We also have 39 what we call microcredit institutions no longer existing. Tonight we'll be trying to understand from various perspectives what's going on in this purge. I'll be speaking to Kofi Amwewa. He is the man heading financial institutions or other financial institutions supervision at the Bank of Ghana. I had a chat with him. I'm going to play you parts of that interview. I'll have in studio the receiver for the banks joining me to talk about how he intends to go about managing the process. But before all of this, I'm going to take you out to town. Richard Anakwe Abe visited some of the closed microfinance institutions to find out what was going on with them.
The receiver, Eric Nananipa, earlier told City Business News that customers should report at the premises of the affected companies to fill proof of debt forms. However, checks by City Business News at some of the affected companies revealed otherwise. At the Capital and More Microfinance office along the Ring Road, the office was under lock and key with no official available to speak to. I'm here at the office of Capital and More Microfinance Company Limited, and as you can see, the place has been locked up. And speaking to people here, I'm told that the company has not been in operation since October last year. And I speak to some sellers here who tell me that since October, they've not been able to operate. And at a point, someone came and attacked them, and since they closed down, they've not been able to bounce back. And if you go according to the list the BOG issued as microfinance which collapsed, you would find out that Capital and More is one of them. And I don't know if we can try and see if it would open. So the place is firmly shut, and as the BOG has announced, we are expecting that once the receiver comes in, people or depositors would come in here and pick whatever form they have and make claims to their monies. The team's next stop was at Mass Microfinance near the Kwame Nkrumah interchange. The situation was not different. So I'm at the office of Mass Microfinance Company Limited, one of the 347 companies, microfinance companies, which were shut down. And according to the Bank of Ghana, Mass Microfinance has not been in operation. So it is part of the companies that had ceased operations for quite some time now. When we got here, we spoke to an administrator who did not want to speak on camera. But from what he was telling us, he claims that they have paid all their depositors, and there are few people who are yet to be paid. And Mass Microfinance Company has 3 branches. So as you can see here, we went inside and the place was virtually empty. There was a caretaker who came and spoke to us, and he also corroborated what the administrator had told us on phone. The receiver has promised that depositors will be able to retrieve their locked up funds in 30 days after a validation process. Reporting for City News, my name is Richard Anakwe Abe.
So that was Richard Abe's report. So clearly some of the institutions have not been opened. We'll show you quickly the breakdown of the institutions. So although there were 347, they are grouped into 2. 155 were simply insolvent. 192, both insolvent and at ceased operations. Now, these would be taken over by a receiver. Now, there are 39 microcredit institutions whose licenses have also been revoked. Of the 39, 20 were simply insolvent and 10 had ceased operation. So it means about 202 of the institutions had ceased operation, and an additional 184 had their licenses revoked, in addition to the ones who had their licenses revoked because they ceased operations. Now, this license revocation was in line with Section 1231 of the Banks and Specialized Depositors or Deposit-Taking Institutions. And indeed, the rule is very clear. It says where the Bank of Ghana determines that a bank or specialized deposit-taking institution is insolvent or is likely to become insolvent within the next 60 days, the Bank of Ghana shall revoke the license of that bank or specialized deposit-taking institution. The BOG shall appoint a receiver at the effective time of the revocation of the license under subsection 1. This is 123 of the Bank and Specialized Depositors Act 930. And it says the receiver appointed shall take possession and control of the assets and liabilities of the bank or specialized deposit-taking institution. And then they define insolvent, very interesting, in 4 of 123. For the purpose of this section, insolvent means the inability of a bank or specialized deposit-taking institution to pay its obligations as they fall due, or the circumstance where the value of the liabilities of a bank or specialized deposit-taking institution exceeds the value of its assets. So earlier today, I visited the Bank of Ghana to speak to the man who's in charge of this process. He is Kofi Amwewa. He is the head of other financial institutions at the Bank of Ghana. I asked him why they were doing this now and why it's taking so long. The interview is very long. I'll bring you a first part of the interview before we come back in studio. So this is my conversation with him. These 347 microfinance and 39 microcredit, it will be wrong for them to say they are surprised about your action. Based on what you've outlined, you definitely would have written something to them earlier, warned them of certain aspects of their business operations that were not adding up.
Exactly.
Possibly spoken about the fact that they were getting insolvent, therefore they shouldn't take new deposits.
We've done in
so
most cases.
Is any of them said that the first time they heard or from you in regards to their state was on 31st May? That would be wrong.
That would be wrong.
They all would have heard of you one shape or form.
Yes, that would be wrong. The only thing we don't tell them, it's like Judgment Day. Only the Father knows, even the Son doesn't know. So we did that work back and forth, pushing and pulling all that time between 2014, 2015, and nothing was working. I've not mentioned the point of resolution when you are so down, your capital adequacy is not at the right place, and we are concerned about your solvency. We ask you to make capital restructuring plans. We ask you to present a reorganization plan, recapitalization. A few of them were able to do it, And don't forget, between 2015 and middle of 2018, June 2018, we expected them to have raised minimum capital from wherever it was. It used to be 100,000. We lifted it to 500,000 and then jumped it to 2 million. Only a few were able to show new capital and so on. So we had encouraged them. If you can't find the money is not in your pocket. Find a partner who has the money, partner with the person. And we saw some of those cases as well. They brought in new investors. And then also merger and acquisition, part of resolution.
Okay.
If you can't do it anymore, find a bigger partner. So we exhausted all that. And the only thing we didn't tell them was we are going to revoke your license. But there again, in our communication with them, we're able to tell them that if these breaches persist and you create vulnerabilities and you create anxieties among depositors and so on and so forth, and it persists, we'll caution you that we can revoke your license. We're able to put in the narrative that goes to them.
Okay.
We're able to give them that signal if it persists.
Now,
we would.
I need to make a clarification. So there are two groups. One group in terms of microfinance. Yeah. One group had been dormant.
Yeah.
And then one other group is insolvent. Yeah. Those are two large categories. Yeah. So 155 dormant and insolvent, 192 insolvent.
Yeah.
How come we group them together? If somebody's been dormant, that means it's been over a year.
Yeah, for a while.
Why didn't we
act sooner on them?
Act sooner on the dormant. Why did we wait to now add the insolvent? That's the first question.
Okay.
Number two, what do you mean by insolvent?
Okay.
If you say they're insolvent, what does it mean?
Okay, so maybe let me tackle that first.
Yes.
Insolvency means you've gone beyond liquidity problems. Liquidity is temporary. Insolvency is more long-term, more structural. So at the point where your liquidity is in the bad place, you have to introduce new capital. When it persists, and you are unable to introduce new capital, then you are insolvent. So insolvency, also defined by the law, your liabilities exceed your assets. You add liabilities together, and they should equate as a capital and liabilities. Okay, should equate assets. So where the liabilities alone, exceed assets, then you have a situation where your capital is negative. So at that point, your liabilities far exceed your assets. You're unable to resolve. You're unable to correct that. And as long as you're in that position, you are threatening the depositors' funds, which is the point at which we said enough is enough. We've exhausted all options that we have as supervisors.
So why are we now announcing their insolvency and dormancy?
So it's been a process. It's been a process looking at them as a sector, looking at the institutions as a group, and recognizing that for them we don't have liquidity support. If you look in the law, you don't find a provision that a licensed institution having problems get some kind of window opened by the central bank, get a little money, turn around, bring the money back as in overnight, and so on. We don't have liquidity support for MFIs. Remember the model. They are private limited liability, become very small, and so on and so forth. So for a while, we had hoped that even though they are ceased operation, they will come back. Even though they couldn't operate profitably, they were looking for solutions. At the same time, if you want to resolve, keep in mind that they are licensed institutions. Keep in mind that we don't have deposit insurance. It meant that there's an implicit obligation on the part of government. A licensed institution, it has problems. You have to find a way to salvage. So it's taking a while. We're giving all that while giving opportunity. All that we're hoping they will come back with some turnaround plans, some resuscitation, some recapitalization. They didn't come back, but they are ceased operation and so on. So it took a while, and given the extent of vulnerability, it was thought that this was about the time, the right time to do this.
In your statement, permit me to read, you said the majority of licensed microfinance companies began showing signs of distress from 2014 onwards as a result of severe undercapitalization, high cost of operations, largely from high and unsustainable interest rates offered to depositors, poor lending and investment practices leading to inordinate losses, diversion of customer deposits into private and profitable and speculative ventures, general non-compliance with prudential norms, poor corporate governance, weak internal controls, and fraud. These are about 9 different conditions. You did not separate. In the banking situation, when the statement came, specific, UT Bank, this is what they did. Capital Bank, this is what they did. Why didn't you try to group the companies? It's as if you've swept them with the same brush. Why? Is it because no matter what caused it, they are insolvent, so they are insolvent?
There's commonality. Almost all of them exhibited some of these characteristics. So remember, there are hundreds of them. So we couldn't do a case by case. But we have files.
You couldn't even group to say, because don't forget, you said that some of them were, they didn't have the capital.
Yeah.
So if somebody doesn't have let's say 2 million.
Yeah, 2 million.
And because of that, they can't function. Yeah. It's not the same as somebody who has used customers' deposits for private and profitable and speculative ventures. It's not the same.
I'm sure we could have done that. But let me remind you, some of them actually had the 2 million. But given the scale of operations, given the model that they had operated, they are taking the deposits far in excess of that. They made losses over the period, unable to recover their loans and their assets. So a couple of them have a number of them, I can't give you the number, but a number of them have the 2 million. But given the model they use, given their scale of operations, they made losses to the tune of I don't know what. So it was a combination. So I'm sure it would have been helpful to group them, and I'm sure we can do that. We have them. Each case has a story. Each one of them, we can tell what happened to them. The ones that have done the bad things, the misbehaving bankers, I prefer to refer to them. We are able to tell. Not all of them have done these things.
Because I'm sure there are some who would say that we just didn't have money.
Yeah.
Not because we had done anything wrong with somebody's money, versus somebody who took depositors' money into a speculative venture.
Yeah. And lost.
And yet they are all in the same category of 347. Some will say that's not fair.
Oh, that's a fair comment. I'm sure we'll be in a position to do that. But the essence of this is to put all of them together, essentially, to say we are looking for insolvency. We are using the law, and the law defines what's insolvency. Okay, when you are in this situation, and we're giving the opportunity, we work with you, and for every day you operate, as soon as you become insolvent, liabilities exceeding assets. For every day you operate, you are using depositors' funds now. Okay, every time you move, and so you are spending depositors' funds. So that's the point at which the law gives us that power to trigger.
Okay.
So they've done different things, roughly about the same. Not all of them have done the same things. Let me put it that way, and so on and so forth. But the key thing we're trying to do is to identify the insolvent ones, the ones that are creating the mess, and the need and the determination that they are threatened depositors' funds, and if they continue to get worse.
Some wonder why it appears license revocation was the first option. Again, comparing to the banks, there were different options. Some were asked to merge, some were asked to do certain things. But
I think I'll explain that. I've told you we exhausted all.
You exhausted also. All of them
were exhausted.
Could not.
By the time we get close to making a determination we are insolvent, and then we should revoke. At that point, we are gone pillar in post.
It's gone. There's nothing else to be done.
All the way to the end.
Okay.
And we've engaged them.
This is still the point of view. So we're trying to piece together the story behind the great purge, as we call it, in the microfinance institutions. Now, this interview is a long interview. I'll bring you later things around the structure of Ghana's financial system. So as you know, we have the banking, and then we have the tier 1, tier 2, all the way to tier 4. My guest explained that as well. And I also asked the cost of the action they're taking, and whether the Bank of Ghana itself needs to bear some of the blame. But I'm going to take you into a brief report Bobi Osei put together, which was really capturing an interview I had earlier today with the receiver, Mr. Eric Nipa.
Last week, the Bank of Ghana announced the revocation of the licenses of 347 microfinance companies due to what it said were efforts to protect the stability of the financial system and to protect affected depositors numbering over 700,000. Speaking on the City Breakfast Show on the developing situation, the receiver of the defunct microfinance companies, Eric Nananipa of PricewaterhouseCoopers PwC, said his team was committed to paying all valid claims covering principal investments plus interest presented by customers of the defunct microfinance companies.
The key thing is the closure date, 31st of May 2019. So what the balance of the customer is legitimate, what the balance is after the 31st, that is what we work with. So obviously that would be a combination of principal and interest up to the cut-off date of the 31st of May, and that is what we shall look at.
Commenting on how his office was going to handle the enormous task of paying affected depositors while trying to settle other creditors, Mr. Nananipa said some ex-workers of UT Bank, Capital Bank and Premium Bank have been employed to assist with the resolution of all issues concerning the now-defunct 347 microfinance companies.
I have a team of 420 personnel working for me. So some of them are PwC staff. I also have the fortune of working and tapping from ex-staff of UT Bank, Capital Bank, and Premium Bank who are available, ready and willing to work.
So when will depositors receive their monies? According to Mr. Nipa, all customers whose monies are locked up with the defunct microfinance companies should begin reporting to the premises of those companies from now on for payment processes to commence.
This is the point of view. We are unraveling the great microfinance purge. Don't forget, this is the second installment of the financial sector reform. The first installment was the banks. Now, later on, you'd hear why they jumped one tier. Because we have the savings and loans, the finance houses, and the rural and community banks. Why haven't they been touched? All those questions will be answered, plus your messages, plus more from the receiver when we come back. Stay with us.
Envelope yourself in the arms of nature. Rise up every day into a refreshing and transforming experience. Relax and enjoy world-class rooms, unforgettable services, and truly sumptuous cuisine. Treat yourself to the exquisite conference facilities with internet access. Take a tranquil boat ride to the beautiful Maha village and free your spirit as you cruise along Ghana's most captivating water bodies. Party the night and the morning away in our exclusive party bus and our nightclub. Watch the latest blockbuster movies in our state-of-the-art cinema. Experience the incredible moments of your life at Maha Beach Resort, Ghana's most authentic beach resort, nestled in the heart of the Elembela district. This is Maha Beach Resort. Call 0303-977-773 and 050-157-0684. Email sm@maharesort.com. Maha Beach Resort, redefining indigenous hospitality. Environmentally friendly, affordable, and quality fertilizers committed to improving crop production and ensuring food security through improved yields in Ghana. This is Glofert Limited, a wholly owned Ghanaian company with a global outlook. Ghana's leading name in fertilizer production, Glofert has built a state-of-the-art 120 metric tons per hour fertilizer blending factory, the largest in Ghana. This is able to blend all types of NPK to the specific requirements of farmers. With a 45,000 metric ton warehouse, trust Glofert Limited for all types of NPKs, urea, sulfate of ammonia, potassium nitrate, calcium nitrate, boron, and many more. Glofert is currently participating in the Planting for Food and Jobs initiative under the Ministry of Food and Agriculture. Call us on 0544-339-513 or 0243-512-171. Locate our head office at number 2 Ni Amon Lane, East Legon, Accra. Email sales@glofert.com. Glofert, growing growth.
Welcome back to The Point of View. So here, let me read some of your comments on the subject at hand. Justice Ofei sent us a long one. Hello, Ben. We must begin to question the approach of the Bank of Ghana. Cleaning up an industry can still be done without destroying companies and hurting the innocent people, i.e. employees and depositors. BOG has a duty of care under tort law to preserve sanity in our industry. To that end, and by intuition, once there's a mess, the BOG must be held responsible first. Some people at BOG must lose their jobs and be prosecuted. Alternatively, they could downgrade those insolvent MFIs to a lower tier to help them meet the requirement, or better still, create a new tier for them. They could enforce a better and responsible supervisory role, support them to stand financially, managerially, and structurally. 2, punish all top officials or board that have caused any mismanagement or related fraudulent incidents. 3, enforce the deposit insurance law. And 4, resolute an option for those who want to merge. And this is from Justice Ofei, a columnist and an entrepreneur. Good evening, Bernard. I'm a shareholder in a microfinance company that only gives loans and is not deposit taking. Although we did not have the 2 million CD minimum capital, we were not bankrupt. We were functional, liquid, and had a staff of 7 hard-working Ghanaians who are now jobless. What do we do since we don't owe anyone? Please ask Eric Nipa for me. His people have locked us out, taken the vehicles and even all the petty cash from the office. This is from a listener who would not be named. So I have a few more comments coming through. A lot of questions around how this is done. Bernard, the purge is not wholly professionally done. There were too many as ad hoc choices. There are companies that do not take deposits, do not have liabilities, but have been added to the list. They came to close companies without any formality, attempt to seize properties with documents made along the way. While the process may be good, there are several mistakes destroying hard-earned reputations. He goes on, this is a potentially useful exercise, but handled very poorly. Challenge NIPA because if this was transparent, why send the circular so late and lock offices in the night? Well, Mr. NIPA is not here. He was supposed to be here before the program started. We don't know where he is, but we will still bring you part 2 of our interview with Mr. Amwe Uwa. But before that, let me read out what Mr. NIPA sent late last night. So he sent a notice of revocation, I'm going to just paraphrase some of the things he says he's doing. He says the Bank of Ghana, in accordance with Section 1232 of Act 930, has appointed Eric Nana Nipa, a director at PwC, as receiver for the purposes of winding down the affairs of microfinance companies whose licenses were revoked on 31st May. The main duties of the receiver are twofold. One, to recover and maximize asset realizations for the benefit of creditors, including mainly depositors. Two, distribute realizations in accordance with the relevant provisions of Act 930 to satisfy the indebtedness of these institutions to their body of creditors to the extent possible. Now it says, in order to determine the indebtedness of affected microfinance companies to their body of creditors, as well as the order of ranking, that's very important, the order of ranking of these creditors, we have put in place a creditor administration process with the following features. One, submission of proof of debt. It's called a POD form. It says creditors will be required to submit their claims. That's if a microfinance institution in the list of 347 owes you, you are required to submit your claim by completing a proof of debt form designed by the receiver. In filling these forms, you will be required to attach relevant documentation supporting your claim as well as amount owed you. Two, validating and agreeing claims. The receiver, Mr. Eric Nana Nipa, will independently verify and reconcile the claims submitted by creditors to the records of the affected MFIs, that's the microfinance institutions, to determine whether they are valid or not, and the quantum of claim you made. This is still to depositors. Three, payment to depositors. With regard to depositors of the affected microfinance companies, the receiver will make payments to this class of creditors using funds provided by government for this purpose. Don't forget, government has provided 900 million Ghana cedis for the first part of the project. 1.2 billion cedis is what we know the level of indebtedness is. Finally, payments to other creditors. For the class of other creditors, excluding depositors, depending on the quantum and timing of asset realization in the receivership of the affected microfinance company, the receiver will declare and pay dividends to this class of depositors in accordance with the order of ranking of creditors in the relevant sections of Act 930. It goes on. It is the intention of the receiver to conduct an assessment of the state of affairs of these institutions in order to ascertain the types and values of assets and liabilities of these microfinance companies at the commencement of the receivership. The receiver estimates that they will take 10 days to do this assessment. In the morning, I also asked Mr. Nipa whether people's claims will be paid only on the basis of the principal or the interest. He says they will pay up to the interest 31st May 2019. It goes on. The receiver estimates that the process of validating and agreeing creditor claims will take another 30 days from the date of the deadline for the submission of creditor claims. During this period of validation and agreeing claims, the depositor claims which have been validated and accepted will be paid concurrently at designated Consolidated Bank of Ghana branches. So CBG, which was formed as a result of the merger of 5 defunct banks, is where you ought to go. So two things. If you are owed money by any of these companies, go to those branches that are open, pick up your proof of debt form, and then when the receiver is satisfied that you are entitled to a payment, you will receive payment at a Consolidated Bank branch. They end by saying you can direct all concerns on the receivership of the affected microfinance company to the receiver, Eric Nana Nipa. They leave a phone number on the bottom of the message. Now, I'm going to take a short break. When I come back, I'm going to take you into the rest of my interview. So I asked Mr. Amwewa a few questions to explain the architecture of the financial sector, to walk us through what processes they went through with these 347 companies before declaring them insolvent. And I also asked them whether they should not take part of the blame for the mess. I'll be back with that interview when I return. Stay with us.
It's about the use of electronic equipment and how we dispose them.
We look for the cooper, the price, all of everything. We look for it, but the rubber and the rubbish there, we throw it away.
Those in the business say this is how they earn a living.
The kilo in 1 pound is 10.5.
But do they consider the environmental and health hazard? Ghana, a dumping site for electronic waste.
You can see that huge ball is indeed a very scary.
Today, Agbogloshi is a mountain of hazards.
What is happening here is that copper wire is being extracted from cables that have been brought here at the Agbogloshi dam site.
Coming up this June, Counting the Cost, the electronic dump site in Agbogloshi, a CTTV documentary.
We spice up your mornings with culturally enriched conversations, social interviews, and policy-oriented discussions that will keep you updated on the progress of the nation. Let your voice be heard with the hashtag #BreakfastDaily.
It's actually a good thing and healthy to be okay in your own skin. Not because you don't have the options, but it's also healthy to be able to say, listen, I'm going to the movies by myself. I'm going to the restaurant by myself.
Join us for Breakfast Daily, only on City TV. Join the Breakfast Daily team Monday through Fridays from 7:30 a.m. to 10.
Welcome back to The Point of View. We have some of your messages coming. Let me read a few more. Hello, Ben. Bank of Ghana has done well in cleaning up the banking sector and microfinance sector. But what control measures have they put in place to ensure that these things don't recur? And what measures have been put in place to ensure that the undue influence of political colors are eliminated in the sector? Emmanuel Mensah. Emmanuel, I asked that question to my guest. I'm going to play that interview shortly. Good evening, Bernard. The process BOG has adopted isn't the best for us as a people, considering the struggles one has to go through in business operation. And did I hear that the closure of the microfinance business was like the second coming of Christ? Only the Father knows. Is BOG playing hide and seek with the microfinance institutions? Lawrence, Roland, Arthur, Wejagbawe. So, Joseph Kofi Amwewa is the head of other financial institutions at the BOG. This is part 2 of my interview with him. Bank of Ghana has dealt with banks at the high level.
Yeah.
You've come to microfinance and microcredit. This is tier 2 and below.
Yeah.
But you have left savings and
the
loan,
middle.
finance houses. But some people say their monies are locked up with some of these guys.
Yeah.
But you haven't done anything about them.
Yeah, good question. Good question. Work has been done. Estimates of how much deposits are at risk is public knowledge. 6 point something billion. They have to do further work to document these liabilities and so on and so forth. You cannot touch it if you don't have a resolution plan. You know, I've hinted you that the regulated financial institution that has a license, that the system that doesn't have deposit protection, you know, the option is left to government. You know, in our system, Bank of Ghana is the resolution authority. Bank of Ghana cannot move if there is no fiscal resources behind it. So what I can say is that the work is being done. The governor has given that commitment. What we are trying to do is to clean the entire financial system. We have to clean the entire financial system. So we did the banking sector is the biggest. Is the biggest. What they call significant financial institutions. You know, probably 95% of the entire banking system is banks. Okay, and don't forget the other institutions, the other financial institutions, capital market operators, insurance entities, pension companies. So they all keep money with banks. So that's what makes banks significant. So if you leave money at the capital market place, as an asset manager place, that money will find its way to the banking system. I hope you get it. So banks are that important. So we couldn't hide from it.
So you have to deal with the bank first?
I have to deal with them, obviously. I hope you understand the arrangement of it.
Yeah.
So banks are the big part, all right? The savings and loans is the next significant level.
Because you are saying 6 billion.
About 6 billion.
And the MFI is about 1.2 billion.
Yeah.
So why have you left that? So in terms of, is it that you don't have money?
I've explained that.
No, I don't understand this. So you don't have money? Because if you are dealing with
the plan is not ready. Let me put it that way. The plan is not ready. Hope you get it. Because it has to be a complete plan.
Which involves government also providing money.
Resources.
Wow. So we could well be waiting for another announcement.
It has to be done. What the governor has indicated is that this cleaning must be complete. Don't forget that we have come out of an IMF program. Before we got out of the program, there were what they call the structural benchmarks from the beginning.
Yeah.
But then to get out now, they created prior actions.
Yes.
Prior action. I'm glad I remember that. So prior action, things that must be done before we exit to assure IMF that we will not come back to them. That will be able to do things ourselves, fiscal, and then the foreign exchange management, and then the financial sector. Mm-hmm. So those are the commitments that we've made, and therefore the Ministry of Finance has talked about this. They are not hiding from it. There's a need to find fiscal resources, and there's a talk at the government level. If it's not done, the financial sector cleaning or cleanup will not be complete. All right.
So we're talking 1 million depositors, 1.2
million depositors.
1.2 million depositors. And the amount of money is about $1 billion. $1 billion.
$1 billion, yes.
$1 billion.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's the estimate. But don't forget what is about to happen now. And I'm glad we're at that point. The receiver will do his work. Receiver has taken control of these institutions. There are pockets of resistance here and there. It was expected. But once they take control, they are going to do inventory, assets and liabilities. They are going to confirm deposit balances and so on. All right. As we speak, they are asking the depositors from the statement Mr. Nipa released today to complete claim forms. So that's the beginning of, if you have a claim, come and complete the form. The next step would then be to show ID and show proof of debt. You have a certificate, you have something. So that's the beginning of the process, okay? We are confident that and against those claims that are filed, there will be validation. So it's not automatic that you walk in, the institution owes me 100,000, I have it on a piece of paper, you show it to them, they'll take it. You get it registered, and the work will be done soon, given the fact that people are suffering, given the agitation, given the expectation. Money has been provided. We need a process, and what they are doing now is a process. So the claims will be validated, and to answer that question, probably will not need the full amount. That's the estimate we made based on data, based on the records from these institutions.
So you may not even need that.
But
again, in the banking case, when the receiver came on board, GCB then took over the assets and liabilities.
The good assets and good liabilities.
But in this case, 347 organizations will no longer exist.
Yes, they are gone.
You are not thinking of salvaging what will be left of their assets and liabilities?
No, that's the receiver's work.
Yeah, but you are not tasking him to, for example, merge what will be left into some entity.
No, these ones are gone. I mentioned in the beginning, these are regulated financial institutions. Okay, they need a license to operate. They are not the ordinary, fast goods moving thing. They are not manufacturing. They are not farming. These guys need a license because of the confidence in the public, because they are dealing with people's money.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying that people will be wondering. So let's assume each of them even employs 3 people.
Yeah.
That means all those people are going home.
They're gone. But we'll address that. Hopefully we'll address that.
How are you going to address that?
So let me address the point about the receiver coming in.
Yeah.
Receiver doing his work. Receiver finding records, confirming records, and so on. But the primary point is that as regulated financial institutions, their licenses have been pulled. They cease to be regulated financial institutions. So you cannot call yourself anything without a license. So that is where it starts. So the receiver now, because we are in resolution, we have revoked licenses, and we have to find the receiver comes in because we need an orderly way of winding down this institution. It takes a while. As we speak, there'll be communication with the registrar general, registrar of companies, more or less. By the time this process ended, we determined that they don't owe anymore, their liabilities are taken care of. Most of them don't have much by way of access anyway. So when that process...
Most of them don't even own their offices.
They don't own much. So when that process is complete, the registrar will have a duty of striking them off the register of companies. So they
disappear into thin air.
Yeah, they are gone. They are gone. That's the construction, you know. So the ones that remain are the ones that are going forward. The 137 and the 31, you know, others. It's now that we have to look at the model. We'll be going to reform the future of...
Did you feel that there were too many MFIs? So in doing this as well, you really wanted to reduce the number?
No, not in that manner. Indeed, if there were many and they were fine, behaving well, doing the right things, they didn't pose problems, they didn't pose supervisory challenges to us, and they were operating. Don't forget that some of them are operating in nooks and crannies of the country. Formal institutions, we have to make that point, don't operate in those places. I mean, I've had calls from all parts of the country. They've closed their thing, what do? We've thought about that. Nearby institutions and so on and so forth. But largely, MFIs are able to, we call it outreach. They're able to go extend, access to some of these people, requiring minimum documentation for financial inclusion purposes. So it's a good thing to have microfinance. And going back to the earlier point, if they're operating well, and they are fine and we don't have problems with them, and they are giving people the small, place to save their small money every day. Because they worry, they don't want to take those monies home. And our women, where market women keep their monies and so on and so forth. You know what happens to a currency when we don't handle, so they need places to save their money. Mm-hmm. So for financial inclusion purposes, to give people access, and not just access, usage. You have a device, you can save 1 CD a day, 5 CD a day, 10 CDs a week, all right? Then you can use it. Today, we know what is happening with mobile money. So microfinance will be relevant. It's just that it's not just about the share numbers. Yeah. It's about the behavior. It's about their conduct.
Finally, sir, I just need to find out. There are a lot of people who say you've spelled out a lot of the things wrong with the institutions, but you have conveniently not spoken about your own lapses. Yeah. Because if you are supervising this system for 347 out of about 500, that's about 2/3.
560, yeah.
To all have this problem is beyond behavior. Yeah. It's systemic, and it's also weak supervision. Yeah. Do you not think the Bank of Ghana owes the people of Ghana an apology for poorly supervising this critical sector, leading to this anxiety that it caused customers?
We don't admit that. We don't admit that. What we can admit is that there's been a challenge, okay? The institutions, given the way they were licensed, okay, we had a number of them in existence before 2011. So the process to give them licenses was quick, too fast, so they got licenses. Let's just admit that. I mean, going back to 2011, all right? Then we woke up and found out that as they were being licensed, we needed supervisory resources to cope with them. I've told you, management of Bank of Ghana provided new staff. The staff have been trained and so on and so forth. So we admit that what I can admit is that there's been a supervisory challenge. Okay, the
supervisory challenge.
Yeah, a nice name for. But you know what I'm saying. But we woke up and realized that we've licensed so many of them. People who had police permits under money laundering, money lending ordinance and so on. And then we had to cope with that. In many countries, by the way, supervisors have a challenge coping with development. If you want to understand everything before you license, you'll be stifling innovation. Thank you very much. So the decision that was made back in 2011 was to license these institutions. The process to give them a license was a bit quick. a bit quick. Bernard, you have to understand that. So we had all these, but by the end of 2015, licensing stopped. So it's important to put that in perspective. From beginning of 2016, there were no fresh licenses. All right. So the stock of the ones that we had operated were licensed. We had to put supervisory resources around them, and then we had to improve our system to get offsite returns in the quicker way from them, so we can do our analysis in a quicker way. Hopefully, pick up the early warning signals and so on. But we've coped, and so on and so forth.
Thank you for talking to us. So that's the end of this segment of the program. We'll be speaking to Mr. Kofi Amwewa, who is the head of supervision of other financial institutions. We'll go back into the studio to speak to Mr. Eric Anipa, who's the receiver. Eric Nipa, who's the receiver. He's going to manage this very difficult process. He will tell us how he intends to go about that. Stay with us. Welcome back in studio. This is still the point of view. Here are more of your comments on the issue. Francis says, Bernard, now that the receiver is ready to pay customers these companies owe, what is the plan of the receiver in recouping monies owed by some customers? Hello, Bernard. I did not hear or see Medi Ghana Microfinance among either the microfinance allowed to operate nor revoked. Yet they are a well-known microfinance company in Ghana who as at now can't pay their depositors, and they are causing serious anxieties. Why the omission? I don't know. Bernard, clearly Mr. Eric Nipa is a person of interest in this financial sector crisis, and he must act in a way that seeks to solve rather than create more problems. The issues of depositors claim still lingers on. We cannot clear checks because the closed banks cannot pay us. Lawrence from Weja Bawe. Johnson Mauli Agona Duakwa. Bank of Ghana is not doing their mandatory work expected of them. Do we have to wait to this point and close down microfinance institutions to lose jobs? In 2018, because Bank of Ghana didn't do their work, one Ponzi company called GCCH ran away with our millions. Ghana institutions have failed us bitterly. More comments. Mensa Schofield. Supervising challenge. At what time and what have they been doing all this while? Sitting in the comfort of the air-conditioned offices throughout. What challenge? Actually, that's a nice segue into my next segment. So, earlier in the interview, I asked him about what they'd been doing before they got to the point of saying these companies were insolvent. And I also asked him to explain the architecture of the financial sector. So let's watch that segment. Can you give us the architecture of the financial system, placing the banks and the microfinance and others, so people can get a sense of what we are talking about?
Okay. So if you are talking about the financial system,
yes,
you talk about the banking sector first, and then you talk about the capital market,
yes,
and then insurance, and today pensions. So what we have to focus on is the banking sector, the deposit taking, the money deposit institutions, and so on. So in that space, the banks are in the formal sector. We separate the banks from the others. The banks are formal. We've always known banks. Okay, so banks are in their own class.
Yes.
When we come into the tiers, tier 1, tier 2, and so on, we get into the tier, then you're talking about the informal, semi-formal, and informal. Today, savings and loans are what they are.
Okay.
Very formal, but once upon a time, against the banks are formal, savings and loans are informal.
Yes.
So banks are on their own in one class. Then in the tiering, then we have savings and loans, finance houses, and rural banks.
Okay.
They form tier 1. So when we mention tier 1 today, by our regulations, we're referring to savings and loans, finance houses or companies, and rural and community banks.
Okay.
Tier 2 will be the microfinance companies. That's the model we decided to use, which are private limited liability companies that are allowed to take deposits. They have authorization to take public deposits. So they are still in informal sector, microfinance, but they are allowed to take deposits. All right. And then tier 3 are, we call them money lending companies. That's the non-deposit taking. Tier 3 is essentially non-deposit taking.
Okay.
All right. Money lending companies. You want to add the financial NGOs. They are not deposit taking. They are NGOs, but they are allowed to do credit, essentially credit only. So that's tier 3. Tier 4 then will be the individuals, the GASCA, Association of Social Collectors, and then Association of Money Lenders. So money lenders, as we have known them, are basically individuals who have a police permit under the old ordinance to be able to lend money. And then at the individual level also, you have individuals that go around collecting susu. And then as it works, once a day they'll go around collecting these monies. End of month, then they return the savings and take their 1 day portion. Okay. So those are the individuals, individual susu collectors, individual money lenders. Together they form the tier 4. Okay. So essentially they don't come under us. They come under the associations, more in the form of self-regulatory.
So in terms of the ones you regulate banks, commercial banks and other banks. You regulate tier 2, savings and loans, finance houses.
Tier 1, that's tier 1.
And rural and community banks.
Yes.
You regulate tier
2, which is deposit taking microfinance companies.
Good.
And then tier 3, which is the non-deposit taking money lenders. Today we call them microcredit company, MCCs.
Okay.
So they are tier 3. They come under us. We give them license, and then they do money lending. But they are companies.
But you've not always regulated MFIs. This tier 2 people.
No.
Historically, I'm told you started regulating them somewhere in 2011.
2011, that's correct.
How come?
In 2011, it was thought that there was need to put some formality around them. We've had a situation where, as individuals, and in many countries, pure microfinance, you don't even know. You can't regulate it. It's too informal. But then when they begin to be formal, going to restaurant of companies, getting incorporation and so on, then they are becoming formal. All right. And by the time they are becoming formal, then they now want authorization to be able to deal with the public. So if they stay as individuals, we don't want to know about them. I mean, they don't come to our attention. Because all through the country, at every nook and cranny, there'll be people who are doing these things, too many, too informal to notice, let alone to regulate. So it's only when they begin to be formal, they become like limited liability companies, and they open bank accounts at that point. So that happened, for a while until 2011, when we realized it was messy. They were around the country, they were formal, trying to become formal institutions and collecting deposits, and it was thought that we needed some regulation. So we came out with licensing requirements, minimum capital at that time, 100,000 Ghana cedis, and so on. And then other requirements, fit and proper, directors, shareholders, owners, key managers, and so on and so forth. So in July 2011, the Bank of Ghana management thought that we needed to come out with some body of regulations and put.
So that was Mr. Mwewa. I spoke to him earlier today, a few hours before we came on air, and he sought to explain the issues. Here are some of your comments. Bernard, good evening. I think the Bank of Ghana went to sleep for too long because this work should have been done long ago. Some of the so-called dormant firms went with depositors' funds long before this action was taken. Well, you're right. Mr. Mwewa said to me that there were already 192 of the companies that had been dormant for a while, but they needed to make sure they had funds to address the issue before making the announcement. So the 155 were just insolvent, but the 192 were insolvent and dormant. So hence the delay. Francis says, Bernard, now that the receiver is ready to pay customers what these customers owe, what is the plan of the receiver in recouping monies owed by some customers? That's an interesting comment. Imanoni Ankara says, this cleanup is better late than never. So at least there's a positive comment in there. Michael Schofield, I think I read this. He says, it's high time we hold authorities accountable for their actions. Someone has been appointed as a supervisor with an appointment letter that outlines their duties. They fail to perform their duties at the end of the day when there are failures in a given sector. The supervisor is never talked about. So referring to the Banking Supervision Department, that was the question I asked him in the last segment, where he says they have challenges and that he didn't owe us necessarily an apology. But I tell them that their bias towards the closure of the banks is what has affected the entire financial sector. Today, the entire sector is in a mess, with thousands of Ghanaians losing their jobs and livelihoods also going down, and all they care about is their so-called cleaning, when the BOG itself needs cleaning. with a lot of square pegs in round holes. As of today, we don't even have a payment system framework when financial technology is running at top speed in the industry. Let me read a few more comments on Twitter. Miftah Tamale said the BOG reform should have started early 2000s. Ghana would have been talking of something else, not spending money on reforms with such huge amounts, with the cedi too low. Samira says, Bernard, you are doing the best with the statistics and straight relevant questions. You are literally holding the legs of officials to the fire. More questions. What of insurance companies that collect money from clients as investments? I personally had my investment with SH Insurance and up to now have not received my claims. How are we going to claim our benefits? And then there's another one. Good evening, Bernard. The amount earmarked for cleaning our indebtedness falls short of the total amount of deposits funds locked up in this mess. What this means is that some depositors may not be paid what's due them. If this is not the case, kindly ask Mr. Nipa how they intend mopping up the indebtedness. So Mr. Nipa did not show up for reasons best known to him, but we brought you excerpts of an interview we had with him earlier on in the morning. I need to say though that in my interview with him, he said that although depositors' funds were around 1.2 billion, they would have to scrutinize. This was a primary facie information, but they would have to scrutinize and validate. And the 900 million that was given by government should cater for the first part. And of course, there are assets of the companies that they could sell. So the receiver, as I read, has a duty of salvaging what is left of the company. So we'll see how that works out. So I just need to say thank you for watching. I've been speaking to Mr. Kofi Amwewa. He is the head of other financial institutions supervision at the Bank of Ghana. I was expecting Mr. Eric Nipa. I still don't know where he is, but I'm sure you've benefited from the program. My name is Bernard Lovely. Thank you very much for watching The Point of View. Stay with us. Good night.
Point of View is brought to you in association with Stanbic Bank, moving forward, and Glofert Company Limited, growing growth.